Recording and transcribing.
So here we are.
We watched Lincoln.
We did do that. What did you think of the movie Lincoln 2012 with our Daniel Day-Lewis and Sally Field?
I liked it. Mostly because I felt like I sort of knew the story, and I thought it did justice to it. I don't know that it was a perfect rendition, but I thought it was pretty good. I've been reading a little bit of history, and so it sounded pretty good.
Yeah, from the historical point of view, I thought it was wonderful. Even the darkness of everything was barely lit up at night whenever they went into a room, and it was like a little candle happening, and you couldn't really see anything. It was like murky dark. And that's obviously what it would have been like.
Well, it's like, where's the color in the 1800s?
Yeah, you're right. There is no real color. Like they wouldn't be thinking of, we need, like now when you watch any TV show, it's all about the color. Everything, colors turned up.
Yeah. Well, like when he walks through the battlefield, it's like there's supposed to be a lot of blood, and you don't see it because it's kind of black and white almost. And we think of the times back then as black and white because the pictures were never in color. So
I thought that was actually one of the mistakes walking through the battlefield when he saw the all the dead bodies. They all had their guns next to them. And my thought is, the moment they die, somebody grabs that gun because it's useful for something else. It's not like they had a plethora of guns hanging around for everybody.
Well, unless they're out of bullets and they don't do anything except hit
then the gun's good for somebody else, like later, another time. But I don't think back in those times people didn't not take something if it's available to them.
Right.
Like food wise and
the clothes off of people's back. Yeah. Because they were all starving and all that stuff. But yeah, that's the point. I don't even know during those time when they shot people, did they have to reload and it took a long time, or did they have, I don't even know that any. Yeah. I'd have to look that up.
Yes, they did need to reload.
So
yeah. In fact, it was probably as dangerous for the person you're shooting as it was for the shooter.
Yeah. And the backfiring and all that stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of people injured because of gunpowder and things like that. That's for sure. No, I thought they did a good job. Day-Lewis won Best Actor Oscar for that. I thought, yeah, he feels like he deserved it. He really embodied what we know of Lincoln. And I thought, there had to have been just tons of written material. So they, I won't say didn't have to write it, but they just, took all the records of what Lincoln said and just, make him say it. But apparently, Lincoln did not have a lot of personal correspondence, like hardly any at all. So they didn't have that part of him to draw on when they were writing the script and so on. But a lot of people have written about him. So I'm sure that compared to some people, there's a lot of information about Lincoln.
I thought it was funny at the very end when the, I guess it's a spoiler alert. We'll say that the 13th Amendment passed.
Well, same with spoiler alert, he dies in the end. And it's like, we know, we like knowing the ending, it was still, they even mess with us a bit.
Wrong theater, yeah.
Yeah, that was a different theater that they're showing. And it's like, I was going like, this isn't right. It's like they were showing a different theater. So it's kind of like, we're messing with you.
It was good. They didn't show the death. I was hoping they wouldn't because it was the politics they were showing.
Yeah.
And now the mess of politics when he dies is sort of what you're sort of left with is this, what he gave the world, what he fought for. The whole end of the war / abolishment of slavery.
Yeah, what I appreciated most about it is that it showed how very complicated things were. How it's like, okay, well, I'm trying to vote with you, but I can't. And then there's just some of them were so torn for different reasons. And yeah, I thought I appreciated that, and I saw that. I really liked what Tommy Lee Jones he played Thaddeus Stevens, and I thought he did a good job. He had a lot of great lines. He said, "You unnatural noise." And it's like, what an insult. You know, he was just so scathing in his insults. I thought I liked that.
It was neat how at the end of the movie he goes home and lies in bed. He's bald. You first find out that that's a hairpiece, and then he lies in bed with a black woman.
Yep.
And you just weren't expecting that.
Well, if you knew the story, apparently it was the worst kept secret is that he was he was in love with his black housekeeper. So apparently a lot of people knew it, and it's funny how he was talking about his wig before, but how he took it off. And I thought he did a really good job. I appreciated his character, and how he waffled and wavered. And I thought that was really good.
So it reminded me a lot. There's a movie called The American President. You remember that movie? Michael Douglas and
Okay.
Annette Bening is the first lady, and he's the president. And they're trying to get something passed, and it was all about how many votes do we have? How many votes do we have? I remember Michael J. Fox being the sort of tactician,
the bean counter.
Trying to figure out how do we get these people. And you just realize how little politics has changed because they have the same problem today.
Yeah.
And that is, were they going to give people jobs, patronage jobs, if they voted for the abolition of slavery in the 13th Amendment? Like, what were you going to give me if I'm going to do that? And you sell things to them. You know what I mean? Like,
and how Lincoln did so much of that. And I didn't know that. Like, I just assumed, he said wise words and everyone said, I agree with you. But it's like, no, he had to do shuffling and he did some trickery. If that's accurate, I mean, he held people back and wouldn't let them come. And it's like, wow, that's devious,
Lied about the fact that the war does have an ending in sight, and we don't want to make this happen. It shows you that there's no difference in the politics today, what goes on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? Like it's the same corrupt. You're right. You would have just thought people are going, Lincoln, he's one of the greatest presidents ever.
Yeah.
What he wants, but of course, half the world hated him.
Yes, exactly. I really liked the storyline when they focused on the son who wanted to enlist, and how Mary Todd was furious and would not let her, do not let him enlist. And it's like Lincoln said, I can't stop him. And the juxtaposition of both parents who don't want this child to do this, and yet the guy saying, I have to, I'll be called a coward. I will be, I have to do it. And just, it's so complicated. It's not just, will you go to war? It's like what people will think about those who don't go to war, and then those who do. And it's so flipping complicated.
The son wants to go. The wife says, I will kill you if you let him go to war. Let him make his own decision, because I guess the other son died.
Yeah.
And so he's now struggling with what, he can't make both of them happy.
No.
The son wants to go off, and the wife will not let him go off. And so now he's got to stop a civil war just so his son doesn't have to go to it.
Well, I don't think that was his, that was, lucky, but he wanted to protect his son, but his son wants to go to war. Like he needs to go to war.
He can do the bidding of the wife if he stops.
Yes.
In other words, he can capitulate and go, well, give them a whole bunch of things they want so that I can go home to a wife that won't hate me.
Right. But the idea that she would hold him accountable for it is like, oh man, that's asking too much. Like
a strong character.
Yes.
To a point where you don't know if that really existed. You know what I mean?
I believe she suffered from migraines, and the loss of her son, her first son, it just ruined her. And I think she played that very well, that desperation. I think she did a good job of that. And I love how she was so desperate. And then she goes to the party and she puts on that face and she doesn't,
Don't you like it the way Lincoln explained how desperate it was for him too?
Yeah.
Don't tell me that you're the only one who suffered.
Yeah.
It's so funny because there's a lot of talk nowadays about, men's mental health, that men just ride it out and they don't ever complain, and they don't ever think about Martin. Has Martin ever complained a day in his life about pressures that are on him. You know what I mean?
Not you're right. Men are suck it up is what they're told.
Right. And like Lincoln sucked it up, but he said, but it was no less painful for me.
Right.
Even though I did that. And
Yeah.
so when it looks like, somebody is sucking it up, that doesn't mean that it doesn't rock them to the core the same way. They just don't show it. They have a stoic kind of attitude about it.
Well, back in those days, your children surviving to adulthood was a lot more precarious than nowadays. Even when you had a child born healthy, the fact that illness takes kids before 5 years old, and then 10 years old, and then let alone sending them off to war. It's just, when you see the list of had 12 children, 3 survived, that kind of thing. They were a society that knew that well. That doesn't make the pain any less evident in their lives, but it wasn't so. What do you call it? It did happen all around them.
Yeah.
But Lincoln being responsible for all those deaths, that's what the feeling, that the weight of that, you could just see it on Daniel Day-Lewis. Like it weighed him down. You could just see it on him.
There's one, I don't know if it was a mistake, whether they thought about this or not, or they did it on purpose, but there was a time when the son, his young son, climbed onto his back. He was laying on the ground. He went, because he was sleeping, he went down with him, and the son climbed, and he just stood up with this kid on his back. I don't know that I could have stood up with the same ease off lying on the ground that he did without a kid on my back.
Well, didn't you have Martin on your back and you stood on one foot? I'm pretty sure that
Doug did that. I know.
Oh yeah. No, but you had 2 feet at one time, not at the same time.
Yeah. But Doug showed off with the, look at that, 1 foot. And
yeah.
Maybe we should tell what the story was. At Arlene and Henry's, Doug was there, I was there, and I decided I'm going to do a fireman's carry with Martin. So Martin's going, oh, don't do that. And I'm going, no, do it. I put him across my shoulders, and I've got him there, and I'm walking around with him and taking steps. And finally I set him down, and it hurt because within about 4 days I had like a compressed spine, and it, like, with the weight of him on, it certainly I bore the brunt of that carrying. And then Doug goes, here, I'll do it too. So Martin goes across. Doug walks around with him and then stands on 1 foot and goes, see? And everybody goes, oh.
I think the picture was captured too, with Doug with 1 foot up. Yeah.
Don't go, ooh. I could have done that. In fact, I walked, which meant I had 1 foot. I did the same thing. Doug just pretended it was something.
Yeah, so unless you have a kid the same age as Lincoln's kid, and you try and pick him up off the ground on the shoulder, but that was a very tender moment. Apparently, there was writings about how he used to lay on the floor with his kid and play and talk and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff, it's very true to the stories about Lincoln.
There's a scene at the end when the passes, and everybody's taking all the pieces of paper they have and throwing them in the air.
Yeah.
And they just pick them up and throw them. And I'm sitting there watching and going, how much are each one of those pieces of paper worth?
Now,
them, sent it down in the family that they took as scraps, but are part of history. You know what I mean? Like they would have been worth, I don't know, $10,000, $5,000, $20,000, whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever signed it. I'm changing my vote from this to this. You know what I mean? If somebody had a piece of paper with that written on it, it'd be worth something.
The other thing I appreciated is they used the word Negro instead of black, because that's what they would have used back then. And now it'd be politically incorrect to say it, but then.
I mean, the N word isn't allowed, but the word Negro, I think, is still allowed when you're talking historically about black
right,
people.
But we just don't hear it nowadays.
But they did use the N word a couple times at the beginning too.
Yeah, because that's what people were saying. They weren't. They weren't changing it because, understanding what slavery was. If you don't hear about it, how they talked about it, then you'll never understand why it was such a bad thing. So
it was a little woke. It was the start of the wokeness, don't you think?
Sure.
How they sort of pretended that the black people were the overlying reason they're doing this, the altruism that they had. but it was all politics. It was politics back and forth.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Southerners, were, saying we can't pick even if we sign the end of the war, we need the black people to fix our society now that it's been ruined. So we need to keep slavery on just to be able to pick ourselves up by the bootstraps.
Yeah.
And nobody says, well, just pay them some money. Like, you know what I mean? Just not a lot. It doesn't cost a lot to fix up your stuff and employ them. You know what I mean? Turn them into happy citizens instead of, upset citizens. You just need to do that and just be a little less rich. Hopefully that's the whole aspect of the economy, is maybe the economy grows by threefold because you now are paying the black people instead of enslaving them to do the work.
Yeah.
And even though you make less money, if the economy grows 3 times as fast and you only make half as much money, you're still making 1.5 times the amount of money you made before when you were enslaving them.
Yeah.
Because the full growth of everything.
Yeah. The one little story I liked was Mr. Allen and the Privy story, that they had a picture of George Washington in the outhouse. And why would you do that? Why would you put him in the outhouse? That's so undignified. And he said, nothing will make a man shit quicker than looking at George Washington. So I thought it was like, that's an insult if I ever heard one. Leaving him.
And that's the silly politics of the day, though, because we look back and we revere George Washington, although now because he had slaves, they're unrevering him, based on the history.
Well, there were only 2 of the first 12 presidents. Only 2 of them did not own slaves. They all did, except for 2.
No, it was normal. Like,
and any wealthy person did. Yeah.
The thing I was saying, that what will we look back in 200 years now at us today and go, I can't believe we did that. Like I don't have any forebears that will be able to judge me, but you will. And what will they judge you unkindly with 200 years from now and go, great grandma Anita did this. Can you believe it? Oh my God, that's horrific. What would that be?
No clue.
Eating meat.
Oh, probably. Okay. Yeah.
Eating the flesh of an animal 200 years from now will be abhorrent.
Might be. Yes, I can see that.
I'm pretty sure it will be. It will because it'll be lab grown meat by then. Like, why would you kill an animal when you can grow it in the lab?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just the same as the green and fossil fuels and stuff like that. I think there's still going to be a certain amount. We are not at the point yet. Maybe in the future we will be, but getting
200 years from now we won't be using fossil fuels.
Yeah, I would assume not, but it's hard. I don't know what 200 years looks like. That's a long time.
Oh, I mean, look at the movie. There, the most highest technology they were showing you were 2 things: the fact that they could launch shells onto the fort from a distance from the Navy, and the fact that they had a telegraph to set. It really bothered me that it went tick, 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 and they said a whole guy's last name. 4 or 5 ticks, and they had the next guy's vote.
Yeah, no, it's one letter.
I know.
Tick, 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 tick.
3 ticks make a letter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
there were a lot of stars in there. The telegraph guy was Adam Driver, and there's just all kinds of
James Spader was in there.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, I can imagine you want to be part of a Steven Spielberg project, even if it's a side note.
Yeah,
you're happy to do that. Yeah, I thought it was a good movie, especially because it makes you realize the politics of today changed nothing. Have you seen The Good Wife, the TV series?
No,
I've got that on MB. It's really good.
Yeah,
and it's this kind of politics, even at a dirtier level. And it's something worth watching to realize how politics isn't. Let's do the good. I work for the people. I will do the good of the people. That's what I will do. You're stuck the same in the Good Wife. He's stuck with trying to help his son the same way she's trying to have her son not go to war. And the whole world might change because of somebody in power's wife's son and what she feels about it, and whether the war gets to be stopped or not, and how much pressure she's putting on Abraham Lincoln for that to be the case.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard? Have you ever heard of the strange things that have to do with Kennedy and Lincoln's assassination, like the strange coincidences
of the time? Yeah. And same, there was another one in between too, every whatever many years. And then Reagan was also on that list, but he didn't get assassinated, but he had an attempt. So
no, what I mean is, so here's the things. There's a whole bunch of them. Something like Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy, and Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln. Yeah. Lincoln died in the Ford Theater. Kennedy died in a Lincoln Continental.
Right.
You know, like all these things. I kept making Kennedy and Lincoln. They both had a shared history to get to where they were, and just too many coincidences with Lincoln and Kennedy.
Yeah, that it's like, how can that be?
It seems too many. Now I know it's because you're digging later, and I mean, how many the word Lincoln? How much could you be construed with the word Lincoln?
Right. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, we grew up in West Lincoln.
Right. Oh, there you go. Yeah, they were saying that some of them are like, I mean, you can find coincidences wherever you like. Both Lincoln and Kennedy each have 7 letters. Both presidents were elected to Congress in 46 and the presidency in 60. Both assassins were born in 39 and were known by 3 names composed of 15 letters. The reason they're known by their 3 names is because they have to give all 3 names so that they don't mix, Lee Oswald with, Lee Bertram Oswald. You want to be as particular as you can when you're talking about
a lot of Billy the Kid. We don't know even his last name. There's a lot of times where you didn't use 3 names. Not many people in history by 3 names. Now maybe they do that more with killers than they do that with other people, but yeah, I'm seeing the same thing you are here.
Yeah.
Both Oswald and Booth were killed before they could be put on trial. That's sort of funny. Lincoln had a secretary named Kennedy who told him not to go to the theater. Kennedy had a secretary, Evelyn Lincoln, who was born 100 years after Lincoln and whose husband's herald nickname was Abe, who warned him not to go to Dallas. Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater. Kennedy was shot at Lincoln automobile made by Ford. The male companion of the other couple was wounded by the assassin. Both presidents were accompanied by another couple. Both presidents were shot on a Friday.
Both succeeded by a Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a lot of freaking things.
There is a few of them.
I mean, I know there's nothing to do with that coincidence, but it's fun when you go find them. And I wonder how many things you knew Tina Kennedy. You grew up in West Lincoln. Like how many other Lincolns? Dad collected pennies and had some Lincoln pennies.
Okay, a false assumption says although Kennedy had a secretary named Lincoln, President Lincoln did not have a secretary named Kennedy. Lincoln's secretaries were Nicolay and Hay. So some of them were just
made up.
Well, it's just, yeah. Both were assassinated by Southerners. One was not a Southerner.
Oh, look at this one. This is a huge coincidence. Lincoln, the word Lincoln is made up of letters from the alphabet, and so is Kennedy.
And Lincoln is a car, and Kennedy should be a car.
The Kennedy.
Because I'd buy that car.
Here's one. They both were assassinated.
They were both men.
They both
were presidents. And they had hair.
Imagine we're talking about them and they end up both being presidents. What are the chances?
And they had like people who liked them and didn't like them.
What was it? Lou Gehrig's disease. What are the chances that Lou Gehrig died of a disease named after him? Isn't that incredible? That was a joke in The Sopranos.
Yeah. No, it was a good movie. I liked it. One of the other, I don't know if they all talked like this or not, but the guy walked in and one of the lines was, "Just when I abandoned hope of amusement." In other words, you're going to be hilarious. And I just the the terms, the words, just when I had abandoned all hope
I
of
think
amusement.
there were wordsmiths. I think there were wordsmiths there, and that's what made you stand out and made you. I mean, think about it. You didn't have your face, like you didn't have the kind of media and TV advertisement stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So you used your words to outsmart your opponents. And
But like Jane Austen, the words she uses to weave a story are just amazing. Like it, and like Shakespeare's, we kind of can't understand it, but it's, you know, is equally as profound in a lot of ways. But we need to be able to understand it still. So Shakespeare, you need cliff notes.
That was the experts at the time. You were the smartest person when you knew how to read more than one language. And
Sure.
That was the craft of the day.
Yeah.
But I mean, you didn't have many other things to deflect your attention. So
right.
You would read books, and the rich would read more and more and more books. And so you would start, that's your sword you start to wield.
Yeah. The rich would own, because I just saw the play, Hamilton, and Alexander Hamilton was of the time of George Washington, and he was really smart, but he used his pen. He started out as an orphan, and at 14, they paid for him to go to America. He was working at 14. Like, it was amazing what he could do. He was smart, but he was able to vocalize what a new country and a federation and the way the Union would come together and how to do that. He was able to articulate it in writing really cleverly. And so, yeah, that got him the attention of George Washington and other people. So you could really rise ahead if you could vocalize your brain. So, yeah, it's just opportunities.
Well, it's like, I mean, obviously Obama did a good job of being able to do that. So did Trump. He was a very good speaker, best speaker of all time, is what I've heard. Like, that's what he says, that there are no better speakers, the best of the all America that have
probably whoever lived.
Yeah, the best, because he knows words, right? He's got lots of them.
Yeah, and he uses a lot.
Yeah, he uses them and knows
probably
them.
Better than Lincoln. In fact, that whatever Trump says, you probably should just like erase some of the stuff that Lincoln said, you know, proclamations and addresses and stuff like that, and just listen to Trump.
You gonna get in again?
No, I have no clue. Just might. I don't.
Well, if Biden runs against him, he wrecks the Democratic Party. Like they now, the votes are strewn all over the place because nobody really wants him back in. But
yeah,
that because he beat him before, maybe he has a chance of beating him again.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a chance of beating Trump. I don't know that Trump's going to get in, though. I mean, Democratic Party, the problem is of the politics, and what you learn with a movie like this is they can't get away from those politics. Like Yang would be a fantastic.
Yeah, I liked him too.
So smart. Imagine him and Trump. It would be like in a debate. It wouldn't even be close because he's so calm, and Biden's all, I'll fight you in the parking lot like an idiot.
Well, who someone was talking about Jon Stewart running, and it's like, the thing is, I bet you Jon Stewart might be able to beat Trump. I could imagine that he would.
Well, I probably think he would too, but
because he just has that. They want star power. That's really, they care about that way more than someone who's actually capable of doing the job. That's what I think.
But I don't know that anybody's capable of doing that.
Exactly. Who is fully prepared? I mean, Obama shouldn't have been. He was like a junior senator for a short period of time. Like Trump had no political, and I think he actually did a fairly good job as president, doing the things he said he was going to do, and he did them. And
under duress of the whole Russiagate. And
sure,
all the lies that they perpetrated on him. I mean, he had to carry a pretty heavy weight that whole time. Imagine if they wouldn't have done that. They just said, okay.
What he might have been able to do, Yeah,
let's see what he can do. You know what I mean? We'll go to it.
You know what? It would be interesting what people are like when they're not attacked. Like, we have a new mayor, and she had been the opposition, the NDP opposition for the provincial party. So she was the opposition. She was always, yelling at whoever was in power, usually the conservatives or the liberals, and just yelling. And now she's the mayor. She's not yelling anymore because she's the one in power. And you can't keep saying, yelling you screwed up when you're the person in power. Now you have to say, yeah, okay, we're going to try and do better. And yeah, okay. So it's way different of a mantra you have to be yelling when the buck now does stop with you. Because it's easy to criticize. I mean, you can yell at anybody for anything and say, well, it could have been a little bit better. So,
yeah, no, that's just how politics and your positioning turns on you. Like think about Trump when he wasn't in, and think of how much he yelled at Obama for not being born here, and you know what I mean? And that and then he gets in and he doesn't want anybody yelling at him, yet all he did as a citizen was yell at his president. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, but the cancel culture is huge. Like Mel Gibson says, a drunken line somewhere, and he's just, ostracized to a huge level. And others can do it and they can kind of come back from it. But others, it's not worth the trouble and might as well not even try.
Yeah. I mean, Gibson, I thought he's done an okay job of coming back.
Well, he's not a star anymore the way he was.
Like, is that a thing? I mean, I think there's a problem if you were a star and you made $1 billion and you come back and you go, I think I need to stardom still. Like, if that's what drives you, is that adulation and
yeah, because most don't, because most really actually, if you want the work, you really the celebrity gets in the way of actually the work. So it's probably best if you could just not have the paparazzi and people that
caring about
annoy you. Yeah, so that would actually, but I don't know. Maybe it does play to some ego that people seem to need. I don't know. I have no idea. I am not famous.
Well, this podcast.
Oh yeah, that's right. Our many followers.
Launches us to stardom.
Who someone who just recently died that I'm thinking, what I'm gonna miss is that Dame Edna.
Wow.
Barry Humphries. That character, he was such a hoot. You have to watch some of the stuff. He's just hilarious.
I thought you were saying somebody died and we've lost a viewer.
No, Dame Edna. I was just thinking of all the people that I, watched to be entertained. I just loved the way he just carried on, and I did enjoy him. Her. Whatever. Bring on the drag queens.
Drag queens.
Bring them on.
Drag queen story time? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I don't know. Yeah, that's the big fuss, but it's like I don't know. I don't see the big fuss about that really. I don't know. If you want to go to the drag queens story time, go to the drag. The only reason
it's happening to your kids, and you might not want that. Like the normalization of that.
No, but then don't go to the library for the thing. The whole thing is, it didn't become it was going to be this drag queen was going to go, and there was going to be, 4 or 5 people who were going to be there. But then they had protesters, and now 50 people are there because there were protesters. That's the only reason, really. It's because there were protesters.
But that's like saying, I mean, I'm exaggerating for effect here, but that's like saying, somebody beat up their wife and that you've had a lot of protesters come and now you've made it into a big thing. Well, if it was a bad thing in the first place, whether there's one protester or 1,000 protesters, it's a bad thing. Like you don't value it based on, I agree. You've given it more for its flame.
Yeah.
But then it also, the idea of free speech, don't censor speech, give more free speech.
Give more free speech. Yes.
Speech.
Well, and if I don't know if I want to go to the library and read my book, nobody wants to come and see me, then nobody will come and see me. And if people want to come and see me, they will. And it's like things like that happen or don't happen.
The kids to the library, and now they got Drag Queen Story Hour going on, and they're when you and I were kids, we would go to the Terryberry Library on our way home from school, and if there was Drag Queen Story Hour on, we're sitting there and people are prancing around going, Drag Queens is the best thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
Really? It's the best thing? Oh yeah. Makeup and
well, I questioned the parent. Like, I think it was intended for parents to be going with their children. It wasn't I'm dropping off my 5-year-old at the library and, oh gosh, they've been exposed to a drag queen. How terrible is that? I don't think that was it. It was family story time. If parents want to go there for family, who am I to...
Parents drop kids off for story time so they don't have to be with them.
No. To a certain age, the parents have to be there. That's the whole point. You're not allowed to just drop them off. The older ones, I think that was the whole point, is that they were.
If they're young enough that they have to be with the parents,
yeah,
you should be having drag queen story time.
Well, the thing is, they have it, and then 2 people shows up, and then the guy says, "I'm not coming to do this again." Nobody comes to my story time. So that's, if it dies a death, if nobody wants it, if people want it, then I guess they get it. I don't know. I wouldn't go. I'm not going.
No, I'm not going either. But there was a really good discussion. Jim Jeffries, a comedian. Do you know him?
I think I must have heard of him.
He was interviewing my guy, the Canadian psychiatrist. I can't think of his
Jordan
name.
Peterson.
Yeah. Interviewing him. And the whole idea of somebody, there's a gay couple wanted a wedding cake in the States, and they went to this one bakery and they said, we're not going to do it. And so he's saying, Jordan Peterson's going, well, if they're not going to do it, they don't have to do it. And, Jim Jeffries goes, but is that right? And he goes, well, if it's wrong, then they won't have people coming buying cakes from them anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And they'll lose their business. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If it's the right thing to do financially, because the other people like you for doing it, you're going to make more money. And he goes, it'll figure itself out. So, and that's what I agree with. You agree with. Jordan Peterson agreed with.
Let it happen.
And Jim Jeffries said this, and he said, well, that's like, water fountains that where you had black only water fountains and white only water fountains. Was that okay? And should you allow that to be the things that happen? And Jordan Peterson and just let it go. Shut up. Don't argue. Let the world figure it out.
Right.
And Jordan Peterson said,
good point.
No. He said, good point. And he goes, so isn't that the same thing? And he went, you know what? You've given me something to think about.
Yeah. No. And
nobody says that in this world. Nobody has the humility to say, you know what? Your perspective helped me see something that took. Nobody says that in this world. And in the middle of an interview, he's saying, I might change my mind on this. That was a very good perspective. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why I like him.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want the drag queen story hour at the library. Like, I'm not going to be going, but part of me says that if people think that it's important, let them do it. I don't know. But yeah, the forcing of the issue is the thing. We must have the flag flying or I am wounded. I don't know. I want a flag then too, and fly my flag in July. And otherwise I'll be wounded.
So now the bathrooms. You have a guy going to the women's bathrooms because he identifies as a woman, even though he's a full guy.
Yeah.
You heard in the States, you could be a male saying, I want to go to the prison, the women's prison, identify as a woman.
Yeah.
It's California, there's 218 men that have gone to women's prisons and 0 women who've gone to men prisons.
Yeah.
And yet women identify as men too.
Yeah.
How come 0 identify as men?
No, I know. And same with this, the swim team thing. At first I thought, okay, it was interesting, but like I listened to the girl testify, who was one of the swimmers, and she said an anatomically correct male was in the change room with us, and we were very uncomfortable. It was not treated with kindness or and it's like, okay, that's an assault just as much as my words calling you something is an assault. So let's
they're not equal. What do you mean they're not just as much? If somebody's standing there in the change room,
I know. Yeah.
They're not equal. at all to a vocal assault of saying you can't do this or you should do this, the whole sticks and stones thing. But
they're considered equally, not equally. They have, that's not the right word. They are both offensive. They both can have offense.
Yeah, but you don't have a right not to be offended.
Right.
But you do have a right to not have a person of gender you do not associate with
in your change room
to be changing. That has to be a space that, I mean, obviously you're not going to change there anymore. You're not going to go swimming at that place. You're going to solve those problems in other ways. I mean, all they have to do, it's so simple. It takes a lot of courage, but simplicity is in its name. Is none of the other women race against this person, and they go and they come in first place, and all the women they stand on the thing and they don't jump in the water, and that person has a hollow victory all by themselves, and they go, guess this isn't so much fun as I thought it was.
Yeah
It's over. There's no race. But that's probably what they need to do to bring it up to the level of, oh my goodness, we have to address this.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. Yeah. They have to be able to say this.
Let's all stand there, go to blow the whistle, and nobody dives in the water but the one person. Yeah. And then it becomes a mockery, and they finish it, and he goes, yeah, I won. And all the girls are just standing there talking amongst each other and go, yeah, you won.
Yeah, you won.
Way to go.
Yeah, you.
That's right. Good victory.
Yeah. Well, even
first, ended last.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a solution. Yeah. So we have gone way off topic. Drag queen story hour, and
I don't know.
No, politics of the day is
Emancipation Proclamation of these kind of funky issues, and they're probably, I wouldn't say as vitriolic as the Black people having the right to not be slaves, as what we're trying to do now for transgendered athletes and stuff. Like, it was a more impassioned plea back then. But I learned something really good. So why was it that initially, when they first decided to have voting, didn't they allow women to vote? Do you know why?
No clue.
So it's like, why, when they said, oh, let's have a democracy in the US and the men will vote? Well,
in Canada, women were not considered persons under the law. That was the
legal reason why then they wouldn't vote. But why? So the reason was because, and then that had to change, but the reason for them not voting didn't really change yet. And it sort of still hasn't. Maybe has. I'm not quite sure. But so it was because men are forced to go to war, just like in that movie we just saw.
Yeah, the draft is for men, not for women.
Right. And they are forced to go to war, or you have sedation or
something,
whatever, and you could be killed or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, some
consequences.
If you don't do what the government's forcing you to do. And because the only people who can make you go to war are the politicians, the men had the reason to determine who they wanted to be their politician, because they will guide them into war or not.
Yeah.
Women didn't have to worry about that for them. They had to worry about that for their sons and all that. Yeah. But if you're a woman who doesn't have any sons and you now are voting for something, and somebody could be put in place to make a man go to war, and he goes, wait, most of the men didn't vote for that.
Right.
And yet they're the ones paying the price for it.
Right.
So that's why that was an obvious thing to them back in the I mean, you saw in the thing, they went, oh, Black people are going to vote and then women are going to vote. You know what I mean? Is that the most foolish thing? And that's really because of the war. And it was ridiculous to think a woman's going to vote, because dying in a war was the only real thing you were voting for.
Right. Well, it was the same reason that women were mad that the abortion issue was decided by mostly, men. Rich white men. And
and that's what I've always said, that the abortion issue should be only voted on by women. Men don't get to vote for that. Just have a vote in the world. You know what I mean? Then women vote, and by state, and the state will determine that. And men just don't get to vote on that issue. It's not a man vote. But of course, the cross-gender stuff's going to come into that.
a birthing person, right? Or because you can't call them mother anymore because you have to be a birthing person because the transgender person who still has the female parts but is male would like to be called not a mother because they're not a mother. They're a birthing person or whatever. It sure makes it complicated. They, you, I don't know. I don't know what to call anybody anymore. You have to say she, her, they, them. I don't know. Can you say hello, you to they, them? Because or do you have to say hello, you's people?
I will give respect to people who give me respect. That's all.
And I will probably even give respect to people who don't give me respect. I tried it, right. but I won't be working too hard to.
I'm not going to force myself to give respect right. to somebody who doesn't give respect. That's a much better way of saying it. Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah. Clearer way. Yes.
Okay.
I loved it. I thought it was a great movie. I don't know that it's a great date night movie or
it was great. Well, it was history, and if you're a history buff, and it seemed fairly accurate. So, I like that about it. It wasn't like, the zombies all of a sudden appeared or,
Yeah.
Because I think one of the first Abraham Lincolns I ever saw was on Star Trek when Kirk had his hero.
Yeah. The one he dreamed up in his head, and Abraham Lincoln comes out and
and then the Sarek from the Vulcan guy came, and then Genghis Khan, and they all fought. And
awesome.
That's not that Lincoln. Okay, we'll see you next month when you will.
Let's hope this was a recording. I'm not, because it's different, and I see a little red dot in the top.
It says this call is being recorded, so
okay, that's good. So then it is. It doesn't say that on mine, and I'm the one doing the recording, so I'm sure it is.
It says this call is being recorded. My voice is almost gone too.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll see you next month.
Cheer for the Leafs.
Yay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.